I'm not even sure why I'm writing this. Maybe it's because I need to get it all out, or maybe I just want someone, anyone, to tell me I'm not crazy. My name's Nick, and for the last 8 years, I've been married to Amanda. I thought we had a good marriage. Sure, it wasn't perfect. Whose is? But I never imagined I'd be here, questioning everything I thought I knew about her, about us. We met in college at a party neither of us wanted to be at. She was magnetic, loud in the best way, the kind of person who could make even the dullest moment feel electric. I was quieter, more grounded, but she said she liked that about me. She'd always joke that I was her anchor, keeping her steady when her life felt chaotic. That feels like a cruel irony now. From the start, Amanda loved attention. She thrived on it. She was the kind of person who lit up when people noticed her, whether it was for her looks, her laugh, or the way she could dominate any conversation. I chalked it up to her being a people person, but maybe I should have seen it for what it was, a constant need for validation. I ignored the warning signs because I was in love. She was the sun, and I was happy to orbit her. The first few years of our marriage were great, or so I thought. We traveled, hosted dinner parties, and talked about starting a family. But things started to change about a year ago. Amanda's interest in me seemed to fade. She'd brush off my attempts at affection, roll her eyes at my jokes, and dismiss any plans I tried to make for us. I thought maybe it was stress. She was trying to build her freelance photography business, and I figured the pressure was getting to her. So I worked harder, longer hours, bigger projects, anything to give her the life she wanted. But no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. She started spending more time on her phone, giggling at texts she wouldn't let me see. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say it was her girlfriends or clients. Her explanations didn't sit right with me, but I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband. So I let it go. Then came the late nights. Photo shoots, she'd call them. Networking events. She'd come home smelling like wine and someone else's cologne. Her excuses flimsy and her tone condescending. "Don't be so insecure, Nick," she'd say, like I was some clueless idiot for questioning her. The worst part? I started to believe her. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how bad it was. Not yet. Not until the night everything came crashing down. It was a Thursday night. Nothing special. Just another evening where Amanda said she had a late shoot with a client. By then, her excuses had become as predictable as they were vague. I tried to ignore the nagging suspicion gnawing at the back of my mind, but something about that night felt different. She left the house around 6 p.m., dressed in heels that seemed a little too extravagant for a casual shoot. I didn't say anything. I just watched her walk out the door, her phone clutched tightly in her hand like a lifeline. Hours passed and my anxiety grew. I kept checking the clock. 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. She still wasn't home, and my calls went straight to voicemail. When I texted her, the reply came quickly. "Busy at work. Don't wait up, babe." That was the moment I decided I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. I wasn't about to let this lie fester without confronting the truth. I started by doing something I'd never done before. I went through her laptop, which she'd conveniently left on the kitchen counter. Amanda had always been careful about her devices, guarding them like state secrets, but tonight her carelessness gave me the chance I needed. When I opened her email, my hands were trembling. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but it didn't take long to find it. There, in her sent folder, was an email to someone named Ryan. The subject line was innocuous, "Next week's plans." But the content was anything but. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was unforgettable. I'll book the hotel this time. It's my turn to treat you, winky face." I felt the blood drain from my face. My stomach churned as I scrolled through her messages. There were dozens of them, each one more damning than the last. "You make me feel alive again. Nick doesn't have a clue. I'm counting down the days until I can touch you again. You're so much more exciting than this boring life I'm stuck in." Then there were the receipts, hotel reservations, dinner bills for two. Even plane tickets for a weekend trip she'd told me was a photography retreat. It was all there, laid out like a twisted map of her betrayal. But the worst was the photos. Amanda had sent him selfies, ones she'd never sent me, in lingerie I'd never seen before, her poses seductive, her smile radiant in a way that cut me to the core. She looked happy, happier than I'd seen her in years. I couldn't stop myself. I went through everything, her texts, her calendar, even her shared photo albums. Every piece of evidence painted a picture of a woman I didn't recognize. Amanda, my wife, wasn't just having an affair. She was living an entirely separate life with Ryan. My hands were shaking as I put her laptop down. I felt a mix of rage and devastation. How could she do this? After everything I'd sacrificed for her, working extra hours, supporting her dreams, putting my own wants on hold. This was how she repaid me? I sat there in silence, staring at the screen. My heart was pounding, my mind racing. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel like her partner. I felt like her fool. And I wasn't about to let her make me feel like that ever again. When Amanda finally came home, smelling of cheap wine and someone else's cologne, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I knew I needed more time to process everything and plan my next move. But as I watched her casually toss her shoes aside and head to the bedroom without a care in the world, one thing was crystal clear. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She had no idea what was coming. 2 days later, I was ready. I had spent the time stewing in a cauldron of anger, disbelief, and the icy determination to get the truth. I wasn't going to let Amanda manipulate her way out of this. She'd made her bed, and now it was time for her to lie in it. Figuratively, of course, because she sure as hell wasn't sharing mine anymore. Friday night rolled around, and Amanda came home with her usual smug confidence, carrying a shopping bag from some overpriced boutique. She didn't even bother to greet me when she walked in. Instead, she plopped the bag on the counter and started scrolling through her phone like I didn't exist. "How was your day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Fine," she replied without looking up. "Busy. Lots of editing to do." "Editing?" I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. She didn't notice the edge in my tone. Or maybe she just didn't care. I decided to start slow. "I was going through some of our finances yesterday," I said, leaning against the counter. "And I noticed a few charges I didn't recognize. Hotel rooms. Dinners for two. Want to explain?" Amanda froze for a split second, her fingers hovering over her phone, but then she recovered. She looked up, her expression switching to that condescending smirk I'd come to hate. "Oh, those? They were for work. Sometimes I have to treat clients, you know? It's part of the job." "Right?" I said, nodding slowly. "So Ryan is a client?" Her face dropped. For the first time, I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. She quickly masked it with a defensive glare. "You went through my stuff?" she snapped. "What the hell, Nick? That's such a violation of privacy." I laughed. A bitter, humorless sound that seemed to catch her off guard. "Privacy? Really? That's what you're going with? You've been lying to me for months, Amanda. Sneaking around, staying in hotels with some guy, sending him pictures I've never seen. And I'm the bad guy for finding out." She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her the chance. "You know what? Spare me the excuses," I said, my voice rising. "I've seen the messages, the photos, the hotel bookings. I know everything, Amanda. So why don't you tell me the truth for once? Who the hell is Ryan?" Her eyes narrowed, and her lips curled into a sneer. "Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing Ryan. And you know what? I don't regret it. At least he knows how to make me feel alive. Unlike you." Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. I'd prepared myself for a confession, for lies, even for tears. But her sheer audacity, the venom in her tone, was something I hadn't anticipated. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "After everything I've done for you, after all the sacrifices I've made, you're blaming me?" She shrugged, crossing her arms like a defiant teenager. What did you expect, Nick? You're boring. All you do is work and complain. Ryan makes me feel special. He's fun. He's exciting. And honestly, I deserve that. I stared at her, stunned by her cruelty. You deserve that? I repeated, my voice low and icy. You deserve to cheat on your husband, lie to his face, and destroy everything we've built together? Maybe I do, she said with a shrug, her tone dripping with arrogance. And maybe if you'd been a better husband, this wouldn't have happened. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The anger that had been simmering for days boiled over, and I realized I wasn't just angry at her. I was done with her. Got it? I said, my voice suddenly calm. Thanks for clearing that up. I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there with her arms crossed, probably thinking she'd won. But she had no idea what I had planned. That night, as Amanda slept in the bed we'd once shared, I stayed up, plotting my next move. By the time the sun rose, I knew exactly what I was going to do. And Amanda, she wasn't going to see it coming. After that confrontation, Amanda acted like nothing had happened. It was like my rage and heartbreak had bounced right off her. She went about her day, scrolling through Instagram, chatting on her phone, and making plans to meet friends. Her smugness only fueled my anger. She thought she'd beaten me, that I'd roll over and accept being the idiot husband while she carried on with Ryan behind my back. She didn't realize I was 2 steps ahead. The first thing I did was talk to a lawyer. I wanted to make sure that when this ended, and it would end, I wouldn't lose more than I already had. Amanda and I didn't have kids, but we shared a house, a joint bank account, and a lot of memories that suddenly felt worthless. The lawyer gave me solid advice. Gather evidence, document everything, and don't let her suspect a thing. So that's exactly what I did. For the next week, I played the role of the oblivious husband. I smiled when she talked about her work and pretended to believe her excuses when she came home late. Meanwhile, I installed a few cameras around the house, small ones hidden in plain sight. I wanted proof that she wasn't just cheating emotionally but physically too. And boy, did I get it. One night, while I was working late, I was actually parked a few blocks away. I checked the live feed from the cameras. Sure enough, Amanda came home with Ryan. He wasn't just some random guy either. He was a coworker of hers from her photography circles, the kind of smarmy, overly confident jerk you could spot a mile away. Watching them together was sickening. They laughed, flirted, and eventually made their way to my bedroom. That was it. The final straw. The next morning, I started putting the rest of my plan into action. First, I emptied our joint bank account. Amanda loved using it for her work expenses, but I wasn't about to let her fund her escapades with my hard-earned money. I transferred the funds to a separate account in my name, leaving just enough so she wouldn't notice right away. Then, I packed up my essentials, clothes, important documents, sentimental items. I left her stuff untouched, though I briefly considered throwing it all out onto the lawn. I also drafted a letter short, simple, and to the point. It would be waiting for her when she came home, along with my wedding ring. Finally, I made a few calls. Amanda loved throwing her little networking parties at our house, inviting over her clients and industry friends. So I decided to host one last gathering, a special event where Amanda could finally face the consequences of her actions. I invited her parents, a few close friends, and most importantly, Ryan's wife, Emma. Oh yes, Ryan was married too. I'd found her information during one of my late-night searches, and after a quick email exchange, we were on the same page. Emma had suspected something was off with her husband for months, but my evidence confirmed it. She agreed to show up for the grand finale. By the end of the day, everything was set. Amanda had no idea what was coming. She thought she'd won, that she'd gotten away with it. But the stage was set, and the curtain was about to rise on her downfall. That evening, I left the house for good. I took one last look at the place where I'd spent so many happy, and now tainted years, then placed my ring and the envelope on the kitchen counter. I didn't leave her much, just a few lines that said everything I needed to say. Amanda, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I know about Ryan, about the lies, about everything. I trusted you and you destroyed that trust. I've given you more than you deserve, and now I'm taking back what's left of my dignity. Don't bother calling me. You won't find me. Nick. As I walked out the door, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. But I wasn't finished yet. The real fireworks would come the next day, during Amanda's party. She thought she could humiliate me in secret, but tomorrow the truth would come out in front of everyone she cared about. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. The next day, Amanda had no idea that I was orchestrating her perfect storm. I wasn't there to watch her wake up and find the envelope and ring on the counter. That part one left for her to process on her own. I imagined her smug attitude melting away as she realized I wasn't home, that I wasn't going to be her doormat anymore. But the real show was still to come. Amanda had been planning her little networking party for weeks. She loved being the center of attention, flaunting her perfect life to her friends and colleagues. It was the perfect opportunity to lay everything bare. By mid-afternoon, her parents had arrived, along with some of her close friends. Emma, Ryan's wife, was on her way as well. I was nearby, parked in my car with Emma. We'd agreed to arrive at just the right moment to maximize the impact. She was calm, though I could see the tight grip she had on her phone. She'd brought printed copies of Ryan's texts and photos, a folder full of receipts, and everything she needed to obliterate his lies. She wasn't just angry. She was determined. Around 6 p.m., I got the signal I was waiting for. Amanda's best friend, Lisa, one of the few people who had always had my back, texted me to let me know that Amanda and Ryan were both there, laughing and joking like they didn't have a care in the world. It was showtime. When Emma and I walked into the house, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Amanda, standing near the kitchen with Ryan, froze mid-laugh. Her face went pale as her eyes darted between Emma and me. For a second, she seemed to consider trying to play it cool, but the panic in her expression was impossible to hide. "Nick?" she stammered, trying to sound surprised. "What are you doing here?" I ignored her and turned to the room. The guests, her parents, friends, and even a couple of her clients, were all staring, sensing that something big was about to go down. I raised my voice, making sure everyone could hear me. "I'm here to tell the truth, Amanda. To show everyone who you really are." Amanda's face contorted into anger. "Are you seriously doing this right now? At my party? You're pathetic." Emma stepped forward before I could respond. "Oh, don't worry, Amanda. He's not the only one here for the truth." The room went silent as Emma opened her folder and began pulling out the evidence. She held up one of the printed texts from Ryan, one of the more explicit ones, and read it aloud. "I can't wait to see you tonight. You're so much better than my wife. She doesn't understand me like you do." Gasps rippled through the room. Amanda's parents looked horrified, while her friends exchanged wide-eyed glances. Ryan, who had been standing behind Amanda, suddenly looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. "What the hell is this, Ryan?" one of Amanda's male friends asked, stepping forward. "Is this a joke?" "It's no joke," I said, pulling out my phone and playing one of the video clips I'd recorded from the hidden cameras. The image of Amanda and Ryan, tangled together in my bed, filled the screen. The room erupted in murmurs and angry whispers. Amanda's mother covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes brimming with tears. "Amanda, how could you?" she whispered. Amanda snapped. "Are you seriously all judging me right now? You don't understand what I've been through. Nick has been a terrible husband. Boring, predictable, and always working. I deserve to be happy. And this," I said, pointing to Ryan, "is your idea of happiness? Lying, cheating, and destroying 2 marriages." Emma stepped forward, glaring at Ryan. "You're a coward and a liar. Our kids trusted you, and you threw it all away for this? For her." Ryan tried to stammer out an apology, but the damage was done. Amanda, realizing she was losing control of the situation, turned her anger on me. "You planned this, didn't you?" she hissed. "You couldn't just leave quietly. You had to humiliate me." I smiled, feeling a calm satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. Humiliate you? Amanda, you did that all on your own. I just gave you the audience you always craved. Before she could respond, I turned to the guests. I'm done here, but if anyone wants to stay and keep Amanda company, you're welcome to. I'm out. With that, I walked out the door, leaving Amanda standing there in the ruins of her reputation. Emma followed shortly after, giving me a nod of gratitude as she headed to her car. The last thing I heard as I left was Amanda's voice, shrill and desperate, trying to salvage what little dignity she had left. But it was too late for her. The truth was out, and there was no going back. For the first time in months, I felt free, and it felt damn good. The party was only the beginning of Amanda's unraveling. The fallout from that night spread quickly, like wildfire. Amanda's carefully curated image, her perfect marriage, her successful photography business, her sparkling reputation, was in tatters, and I made sure to walk away without a speck of ash on me. The first blow came from her parents. Amanda's mom and dad had always been supportive, but they were also old-fashioned, with a strong sense of morality. After the party, they cornered her, demanding an explanation for what they'd just witnessed. According to Lisa, who stayed behind to watch the carnage, Amanda tried to spin her usual story about how I was boring and distant, but her parents weren't having it. "We raised you better than this," her father reportedly said, shaking his head in disgust. "If you were unhappy, you should have talked to him. Instead, you lied, cheated, and destroyed your marriage." Amanda's mom, usually soft-spoken, was even harsher. "You've embarrassed us, Amanda. You've embarrassed yourself. I don't even recognize you anymore." They left the party early, refusing to speak to her further. Amanda's friends, many of whom had only come to the party to network or stay on her good side, quickly distanced themselves from her, too. Some of them unfollowed her on social media, while others outright blocked her. Lisa told me later that Amanda was furious, ranting about how everyone had betrayed her. Irony, much? But the real bombshell came a week later when Ryan's wife, Emma, took things to the next level. Emma didn't just walk away from Ryan quietly. No, she went scorched earth. She filed for divorce immediately and made sure their mutual friends and colleagues knew exactly why. Emma posted screenshots of Ryan's texts and emails with Amanda on her social media, captioning them with brutal honesty. "My husband, Ryan, and his mistress, Amanda, thought they could destroy two families without consequences. Think again." The post went viral within their social circles, and soon, Amanda and Ryan became pariahs. Ryan lost his job. Apparently, his boss didn't take kindly to the scandal, and his professional reputation was ruined. Amanda's freelance business also took a hit. Clients started canceling shoots, some even demanding refunds for deposits, citing her unethical behavior as the reason. I didn't have to lift a finger. Emma had done more damage to Amanda's life in a week than I could have ever imagined. Meanwhile, Amanda tried to reach out to me, at first with anger, then with desperation. She called and texted relentlessly, leaving voicemails that ranged from blaming me for ruining her life to begging me to come back. "It was just a mistake, Nick," one voicemail cried. "I didn't mean to hurt you. We can fix this if you just come home." Another one dripped with venom. "You're such a petty bastard. You couldn't handle me being happy, so you destroyed everything. I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't respond to any of it. I'd already blocked her number, but I kept the voicemails as a reminder of why I'd walked away. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. While Amanda's life was falling apart, I started rebuilding mine. I moved into a new apartment, one that didn't have memories of her lurking in every corner. I focused on my work, picked up some new hobbies, and reconnected with friends I drifted away from during my marriage. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. I also started therapy, which helped me process the betrayal and the anger I'd been carrying. My therapist told me something that stuck with me. Her actions say more about her than they ever will about you. It was a hard pill to swallow, but it was true. Amanda's choices weren't a reflection of my worth. They were a reflection of hers. The last time I heard from Amanda was about a month after the party. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking disheveled and desperate. "Nick," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I've lost everything. I need you. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the messages, the photos, the smirk on her face when she told me I was boring. That Amanda, the one who thought she could have it all while making me feel like nothing, was still there, lurking behind the tears. "No, Amanda," I said, my voice calm but firm. "We're done. You need to figure out your life without me. Goodbye." And with that, I closed the door on her, for good this time. Amanda moved back in with her parents, though Lisa told me they weren't exactly welcoming. Ryan, as far as I know, is couch surfing at a friend's place, trying to figure out his next steps. Their affair, which had seemed so thrilling and exciting to them, had left nothing but destruction in its wake. As for me, I'm doing better every day. For the first time in a long time, I feel free from her lies, her manipulation, and her constant need to tear me down. I may have lost my marriage, but I found myself in the process. And that, to me, is the ultimate revenge. With Amanda completely out of my life, I was finally free to focus on myself. The weight of her lies, manipulation, and betrayal had been suffocating for so long that I hadn't realized how much of my identity had been tied to making her happy. Now, for the first time in years, I could breathe. The first step was reclaiming my space. My new apartment was nothing fancy, but it was mine. I spent weeks making it feel like home, choosing furniture I liked, hanging artwork that reflected my personality, and creating a peaceful, clutter-free environment. It was therapeutic in a way I hadn't expected, like I was piecing myself back together one small decision at a time. I also reconnected with old friends. During my marriage, Amanda had a way of dominating my social life. If a gathering didn't revolve around her or her interests, she wasn't interested, which meant I'd gradually lost touch with people who mattered to me. Now, I was reaching out, apologizing for my absence, and rebuilding those bridges. My friends, to their credit, welcomed me back with open arms. One of those friends, Chris, was a godsend during this time. He'd always been the type to tell it like it is, and when I told him everything that had happened, he didn't sugarcoat his response. "Nick," he said one night over beers, "Amanda didn't just cheat on you. She took advantage of you. You gave her everything, and she gave you nothing in return. It's time you started looking out for yourself." He was right. For too long, I'd put Amanda's needs above my own. Now, I was learning how to prioritize myself, and it felt liberating. I threw myself into work, not as a way to escape, but as a way to channel my energy into something productive. My boss noticed the change almost immediately. I was sharper, more focused, and willing to take on new challenges. Within a few months, I was promoted to a managerial position, something I'd been aiming for but had always felt too distracted to achieve. I also picked up some hobbies I'd let fall by the wayside during my marriage. I started going to the gym regularly, not just to get in shape, but to clear my mind. I took up hiking, finding solace in the quiet of the woods, far away from the chaos Amanda had brought into my life. And, perhaps most importantly, I started writing again. A passion I'd abandoned years ago when life got too busy. Writing became my therapy. At first, it was just journaling, getting my thoughts out of my head and onto paper. But over time, it grew into something more. I started sharing my story anonymously online, connecting with others who'd been through similar experiences. Their support, their understanding was invaluable. It reminded me that I wasn't alone, that betrayal didn't have to define me. About 6 months after the party, something unexpected happened. I was at a coffee shop, working on a piece for a blog I'd started, when I ran into Emma. She looked different, happier, lighter. We hadn't spoken since the party, but seeing her brought back everything we'd been through. "Nick," she said, smiling, "how are you?" We ended up talking for hours. Emma told me how she'd finalized her divorce from Ryan and was focusing on herself and her kids. She'd started her own business, a small event planning company, and was finally feeling like she was in control of her life again. "It's funny," she said, stirring her coffee. "When I first found out about Ryan and Amanda, I thought it was the end of the world. But now, it feels like a blessing in disguise. I got rid of a toxic marriage and found myself in the process." Her words resonated with me. We'd both been through hell, but we'd come out stronger for it. That day marked the beginning of a new friendship, one built on mutual respect and understanding. Looking back, I've realized that Amanda's betrayal taught me more about myself than I ever expected. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I deserve more than what she gave me, and that my happiness doesn't depend on anyone else. I also learned the importance of boundaries. Never again will I let someone take advantage of my kindness or manipulate me into thinking I'm less than I am. Amanda tried to break me, but instead, she made me unbreakable. As for Amanda, I heard through mutual friends that she's still living with her parents, trying to piece her life back together. Ryan, last I heard, was working a dead-end job, and the two of them aren't even together anymore. Their exciting affair burned out as quickly as it started, leaving nothing but ashes behind. Part of me feels pity for her. She had everything: a husband who loved her, a life full of potential, and she threw it all away for cheap thrills. But that's not my problem anymore. She made her choices and I've made mine. I chose to move forward, to rebuild, to be happy. And for anyone reading this who's going through something similar, here's my advice. Don't let their betrayal define you. Take back your power, focus on yourself, and know that better days are ahead. You're stronger than you think. Promise. Amanda didn't disappear from my life as neatly as I'd hoped. Even though I'd blocked her number and ignored her desperate attempts to contact me, she still found ways to intrude. Friends told me she was constantly asking about me, trying to dig for any scraps of information she could get. She even showed up at my office one day, unannounced, hoping to corner me into a conversation. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I'd just returned from lunch when I saw her waiting in the lobby. She looked worn out, like the weight of her actions had finally caught up with her. For a moment, I considered turning around and pretending I hadn't seen her, but I decided to confront her instead. "What are you doing here, Amanda?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She hesitated, her eyes welling with tears. "Nick, please. I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." I sighed, gesturing for her to follow me outside. The last thing I wanted was for my coworkers to witness this drama. Once we were out of earshot, I turned to her. "Say what you need to say." "I've been thinking a lot," she began, wringing her hands nervously. "About everything. About us. I know I messed up, Nick. I know I hurt you, but I wasn't in a good place. I wasn't happy, and I didn't know how to tell you." Her voice cracked, and she took a step closer. "But I realize now how wrong I was. I see what I lost, and I want to make it right. I want us to try again."
I stærte her, dumbfundet.
"You want us to try again? After everything you did? After you lied, cheated, and blamed me for your mistakes?" Tears streamed down her face. "I know I don't deserve it, but I love you, Nick. I've always loved you. Please, just give me one more chance." I let her words hang in the air for a moment before responding. "Amanda, you didn't love me. You loved what I gave you, the stability, the support, the life I built for us. If you loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me the way you did." Her face crumpled, and she sank to her knees, sobbing. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "I just want you back." I knelt down to her level, my voice firm but calm. "You can't fix this, Amanda. It's over. You need to accept that and move on." "I have." She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of despair and disbelief. "You've moved on?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm done living in the shadow of what you did. I'm happy now, Amanda, and you should focus on finding your own happiness without me." I stood up and walked away, leaving her there on the pavement. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. She needed to understand that her actions had consequences, and that there was no going back. After that encounter, Amanda's attempts to rebuild her life became the subject of gossip among our mutual acquaintances. Some people pitied her, saying she'd made a mistake and was paying the price. Others weren't so forgiving, pointing out how arrogant and dismissive she'd been before everything fell apart. She tried to restart her photography business, but her reputation had taken too much of a hit. Clients didn't want to work with someone who had publicly humiliated herself, and the industry circles she once thrived in had all but shut her out. Amanda, the queen of her social world, was now a pariah. About a year after everything had blown up, I ran into Amanda's mother at a local coffee shop. She looked exhausted, like the events of the past year had aged her significantly. We exchanged pleasantries, but she eventually brought up Amanda. "She's struggling," her mother admitted, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "She's trying to put her life back together, but it's been hard. She knows she made mistakes, Nick, big ones, and she regrets them every day." I nodded, unsure of what to say. Part of me felt sorry for Amanda, but I couldn't forget the pain she'd caused me. Her mother must have sensed my hesitation because she reached out and touched my hand lightly. "I'm not asking you to forgive her," she said gently, "but I do want you to know that she's trying to change. Whether that matters to you or not, that's up to you." It was a bittersweet moment, but it gave me some closure. Amanda's life was no longer my concern. I'd moved on, and I wasn't going to let her or her mistakes drag me back into the past. That night, as I sat on my balcony overlooking the city, I thought about everything I'd been through. Amanda's betrayal had shattered me, but it had also forced me to grow. I'd learned to stand up for myself, to value my own happiness, and to let go of toxic relationships. The man Amanda had tried to destroy was gone, replaced by someone stronger and more self-assured. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. Whatever happened to Amanda from here on out, I wished her no ill will. But I also didn't wish her back into my life. Some bridges were meant to stay burned, and this was one of them. Tomorrow was a new day, and I was ready to embrace it fully. A year after Amanda had tried to mend the pieces of her shattered life, I had fully stepped into a new chapter of mine. The chaos she left behind felt like a distant memory, a storm I had weathered and emerged from stronger than ever. Each day felt lighter, and with time, my scars had turned into lessons. One of those lessons was to never settle for less than I deserved. Amanda had made me feel like I wasn't enough, but I'd come to realize that her actions said more about her insecurities than about my worth. It was freeing to finally let go of the self-doubt she'd planted in me. I knew now that I was capable of more than just surviving betrayal. I could thrive beyond it. My relationship with Emma, Ryan's ex-wife, had evolved into a strong friendship. We would occasionally meet for coffee or a hike, and our conversations always carried a sense of camaraderie born from shared experiences. We'd helped each other through the darkest times, and it felt good to have someone who truly understood what I'd been through. "Can you believe it's been over a year?" she asked during one of our coffee meetups. "Feels like a lifetime ago." "Honestly, I try not to think about it anymore," I replied, sipping my drink. "I've got better things to focus on now." And I did. Work was going well, and I had finally reached a point where I felt comfortable putting myself out there again. Dating had been a slow process at first, but I'd learned to take it one step at a time. I wasn't looking for perfection, just someone who appreciated me for who I was. Someone who valued honesty and trust above all else. Every now and then, Amanda's name would come up in conversation, usually from mutual friends who still kept tabs on her. I didn't ask for updates, but they seemed compelled to share anyway. She was still living with her parents, struggling to rebuild her career and social circle. Ryan had completely vanished from her life, leaving her to pick up the pieces on her own. "She's been trying to get people to forgive her," Lisa told me over lunch one day, "but it's not going well. Most people still see her as, well, you know." I just nodded, not feeling much of anything. The old me might have taken some satisfaction in hearing that Amanda was facing consequences. But now, I felt indifferent. She was a part of my past, and I wasn't going to let her existence affect my present. About 2 years after the infamous party, I ran into Amanda at a bookstore. It was unexpected and awkward, to say the least. She looked different. The confident, larger-than-life woman I'd once known was now subdued, almost fragile. She spotted me before I could slip away, and she approached cautiously. "Nick," she said, her voice soft. I gave her a polite nod. "Amanda." We stood there in silence for a moment before she spoke again. "I just wanted to say,
I'm sorry.
for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I wanted you to know." I searched her face for any trace of manipulation, but all I saw was sincerity. Caught me off guard, but I didn't let it linger. "Thank you," I said simply. "I hope you're doing better." She gave me a faint smile. "I'm trying." We exchanged a few more pleasantries before going our separate ways. As I walked out of the store, I realized that the encounter hadn't stirred up any old feelings. I wasn't angry, sad, or nostalgic. I was fine, and that was the biggest victory of all. If there's one thing I've learned from this entire experience, it's that betrayal doesn't have to define your story. It's a chapter, sure, but it's not the whole book. Amanda's betrayal was painful, but it forced me to confront my own needs, boundaries, and worth. Pushed me to grow in ways I never thought possible. For anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, here's my advice. Don't let someone else's actions steal your sense of self. Take the time to grieve, to heal, and to rebuild. You'll come out stronger, I promise. As for me, I'm happier than I've ever been. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine. And after everything I've been through, that's more than enough.